Welcome to CinemaWorks Late Night. I'm your host, Rowan Wesolick, and this is another virtual edition of the show. Today, we have a film and television editor and director joining us as our guest. He also lives right here in Austin, Texas. Mike Saenz went to Brown University for his undergraduate degree and then to the University of Southern California, where he received his MFA in cinematic arts. He directed a short film called Casablanca at USC that was an official selection at the Sundance Film Festival. Here in Austin, Mike has worked on Richard Linklater's movies with Sandra Adair as an assistant editor on projects like Bernie, Before Midnight, and Boyhood, which was nominated in 2015 for an Oscar for Best Film Editing. He's also cut Hulu's Up to Speed, which was Linklater's first TV series. In addition, he's worked as head of story on the animated kids series Kings of Atlantis, and he directed 2 of the episodes in this series for YouTube Originals and Mighty Coconut. Most recently, he's worked as an editor on the Netflix documentary limited series Happy Jail, directed by Michelle Josue, and he worked on Jason Newlander's feature Fugitive Dreams. Welcome to the show, Mike. Thanks for coming on, man.
Hey, no problem.
So just to start off, can you tell us a little bit about your backstory, where you're from, and what inspired you to work as an editor and director in this field?
Yeah, I am from Central Texas, San Antonio and Austin mostly. Grew up in both places. Went to high school in San Antonio. Went to college on the East Coast, decided I wanted to be a filmmaker.
Do you have any favorite movies or TV shows growing up that inspired you?
I went to writing school at Brown, and one summer they did a Stanley Kubrick for his birthday on AMC. They did 2001 and Dr. Strangelove, and then they played them both in Letterboxd, and I hadn't seen them before, and I just thought, okay, I'll give it like 10 minutes, and I sat for all 4 movies and just decided, oh wow, this is what I want to do, and kind of a high bar, but that's what changed everything.
So you said you attended Brown University and then you went to USC to receive your MFA in cinematic arts. Can you tell us a little bit about your favorite college experience, or and then maybe just some of the things you did at both institutions?
At USC, they do a lot of actual hands-on production, and you have to make a lot of shorts. So that was very exciting. They kind of toss you in and toss you out of the nest and make you learn how to do it all. And you're partnered up with new people, and it's a lot like how the industry works. So you just make a lot of stuff furiously with a different crew, and you have to come up with new ideas regularly. Same thing at Brown with writing. I guess a lot of workshops, and you learn by doing. I think that's a lot of the most valuable stuff.
And then you went on to make the short film Casablanca at USC. Can you tell us how that came about?
I guess I was kind of the NYU kid, or more experimental than a lot of the people at USC. So in a way I was rebelling. So I did this, I just told myself, what can a 14-minute movie do? And I just made a dream sequence from beginning to end. But it's kind of all about the creative process in a way. It's an anxiety dream where you have to shake off this desire to please the people around you. And yeah, it was kind of a stunt. And that's all I have to say about that, really.
Did you guys put it on film? Because it had an old film look to it. It looked really cool.
Yeah, thank you. We did shoot that on 35 millimeter. Back at the time, it was you either shot in, that was really before high def was even accessible. So a lot of people were shooting on 16 and 35, and yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't have done it differently then, but now with the digital revolution and all that, certainly wouldn't have paid the money for 35 millimeter student film.
The film got accepted into Sundance. Can you tell us a little bit about that experience, and how did that impact your career?
It was really cool. To say the least. It was really cool. Everybody was angling for that kind of exposure and validation, I guess. So when we got in, since I was rebelling a little bit, because a lot of the stuff they tried to do in school, they try and teach you, okay, aim for something that is very, I guess,
Practical.
standard, yeah, practical, a calling card, maybe 10 minutes of the feature you want to make, maybe something that, you know, has a lot of the standard tropes, but shows you can do them. And I was like, I'm not going to do any of that. I'm not going to tell people whether it's funny. I'm not going to tell people, you know, how to read it and commit to it. And then so when Sundance liked it, you know, and I'm in my late 20s, like everyone there, they're sort of like, okay, see, I showed you all. I'm going to do this thing that you told us not to do, and it'll be great. But then they tell you, in addition to being practical, that the people who write and the people who have a lot of stories and who aren't sort of married to their way of doing it, and can write, you know, something more commercial and accessible, those are the people out of the gate that get to be directors. So when your film goes and gets some pretty big exposure, they all say, hey, so what do you have next? And the important thing is not to be the guy who's like, I don't know, you tell me, I'm a director, I did this, like, give me a script. And it's like, okay, well, call us when you have something. And then you realize, oh, of course, nobody is going to write feature script and just say, here you go, it's yours now. Because writing is the hardest, most creatively wrenching part of this process. So no one's going to sit down for a year and give you something that is so close to them. I mean, it's crazy. So, you know, had to go circle back and learn that.
What would you say was your first paying job in the industry?
My first paying job in the industry was as the assistant editor at a motion graphics place in Los Angeles. And it was around the time I graduated.
So what got you into editing?
That was it. I think it's because I learned Avid, and they needed an assist at this motion graphics place. And I think I lasted about 2 or 3 months before I said, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm just going to try and just cut, you know, edit independent stuff. And that's when I got my first feature out of it. But that's what paid the bills. Editing was something that I knew how to do, and they always needed people in post. But I didn't really go into it thinking this is what I want to do as a paying career. It was kind of your stopgap first industry job, but then you get more and more under your belt.
What brought you back to Austin?
Yeah, I was there for a while, was doing indie stuff, and I kept gravitating toward that. And I thought, well, you know, I can do that at home. So, you know, Linklater does it and Rodriguez does it. And so I thought, I'm just going to move back to Austin and try to get in with those people. And I got very lucky in that. That's kind of what happened. Sandra Adair, Rick's editor, one day, I mean, I was cold calling them, and she said, like, oh yeah, we can meet for coffee, you know, everything's cool. You know, I like meeting new people. And then that kept getting pushed because of, you know, working professionals don't usually have that much time. And then one day she said, hey, are you still looking for an assistant job? Because my assistant is leaving to work on a feature. And I was like, yeah, you know, can you come by this afternoon and meet us? And when you get that call, the answer is yes.
Yeah.
So, lucked out in that way.
Yeah,
now that I think about it, it's crazy to me knowing how busy people are that she even agreed to do it, but she was really great and likes to find new people.
Can you break it down for us what exactly an assistant editor does on a scripted major motion picture?
If I had to say it in one sentence, I guess the assistant editor's job is to keep the editor editing, to keep him or her focused on the creative execution of the editorial process. And that can mean ingesting the film into your edit system, making sure it's labeled, logged, any problems with the computers, and you know, playing it back, making sure that we know where every shot is, that the information from set transmitted through the script supervisor and second AC and sound department, all that gets put into the editing system, and it's a lot of, clerical work as well, but also just keeping stuff organized. A lot of it is that, and then a lot of it is sometimes you'll make selects or circle takes. Sometimes you'll do rough cuts before they can look at it, assembling stuff, and then throughout the finishing or screening process, getting screeners to people, finishing up, meaning like conforming high def and getting all stuff out to departments in color, keeping everyone on the same page. There's a lot to it, but basically it's to keep them editing and focused on as little of the technical stuff as possible.
Could you describe us, like, is there like a role that you play also with the director, or is it mainly just the editor?
It depends on the situation. I've only assisted twice, and that one was at the motion graphics place and one was with the Linklater crew. So with Rick, sometimes Sandra would like ask me to do some creative stuff, but it would always go through her. She would look at it and give me notes and so on. I had very little interaction with Rick that wasn't through her. It's just sort of a protocol thing, a hierarchy thing, because she manages what the editorial department will present. But through that, I would work with Rick on some of, I edited Up to Speed, that series with him. So we developed a working relationship through that. But I'd say that an assistant probably wouldn't go to the director, without going through the head of the department normally.
What would you say your favorite project with Richard Linklater was?
For some reason, I always feel like it's Before Midnight. That's the one for me. I love Boyhood. I love Bernie. Everybody Wants Some was a lot of fun, and Cutting Up to Speed was a lot of fun. But Before Midnight, just for whatever reason, feels special out of all of those. I think it happened very quickly. I mean, it didn't. No, it was like 18 years, but but they wrote it, they rehearsed it, they wrote the script. It didn't change that much. They went to Greece, and yeah, it came together pretty seamlessly.
That's awesome. Yeah, with some of those films like Boyhood that was shot over 12 years, when did you like join on that project?
I think it was like year 7 or 8. And so that's about 4 years of the shoot. And they would shoot maybe three days of the year and tell us any of that. So they shot on film, and then we'd get the film and ingest it and cut it and then put it away for another year. And toward the end of it, as it always happens, there's a lot of work in finishing the film. So screened it, finished it up. I'm trying to remember how long it took, but the finishing process was kind of the biggest chunk of it, because you had 12 years of footage shot on 35 millimeter film that was ingested into an Avid project back before they let people do 24 frame accurate projects. And it was all in standard def. There were a lot of technical issues that we were married to, like 2001 technology or whatever. A lot of technical stuff. It just gives me headaches just thinking about it. But, we did it. That's what it was like.
Yeah. So how was it compared to working on like Bernie and Before Midnight? Did your responsibilities change as an assistant editor, or did they stay the same?
The responsibilities kind of stayed the same, but the tech and way we would execute them changed. They went backwards in a way. Yeah, like figuring out how to move mini DV cut lists and everything to digital process, making a DI. It was kind of challenging, but Rick's kind of a traditionalist in that way, and kept it on 35 millimeter film, even though he had already shot Alexa on Bernie, and I think Red on Before Midnight. I don't know which, but the technical things change, I guess. I did get to, a little more creative playground with Sandra, but a lot of that is just to help her get to where she wants, because ultimately she's responsible for it.
Mm-hmm.
I got to cut in McCartney. When everybody wants some, I got to cut in the Van Halen stuff and do some rough passes of that. So that was all stuff my 12-year-old self would have loved.
That's awesome. Well, switching over to some of your TV work, can you describe what it was like working on Kings of Atlantis on the YouTube series?
Backwards in a way. It was fun, but I was used to a lot of live action. And in live action, you tend to script it, shoot it, and then put it together in post. But in animation, it feels backwards in a way that you script it and then you put it together. Like we would do these voices and scratch track and then have storyboard artists come up with them from scratch, and we would cut them in, recut them, pre-visit, and then when we had a locked edit with all the visuals we needed to in order to explain how to do the actual animation, then they would go back and do production on it. So it's a backwards process from live action.
And you got to direct 2 of the episodes in the series. How was that like?
That was exciting. I don't want to say that fell into my lap, but that schedule was breakneck. And working with the director there on a few of them, he was like, hey, you seem to know the process pretty well. Would you like to direct those? And of course, the answer again is yes. It was exciting. And Sam Bennett worked there on it with us. She was great. She got to cut a few of those too. It was a great atmosphere. Mighty Coconut was a really creatively supportive place. And it was like a playground. Animation is like, you have to imagine it. If you are working on a scripted show and you have actors with a performance and people have put the action in a real place with real people wearing real things, feeling real emotions, you have that as a canvas and you have that to work with. But when you have a script and there's absolutely nothing, you have to put something there. Like, so it's like, okay, well, this shot happens. What if it happens on a staircase and they're walking up the stairs? And what if it looks like this? And there's a lot of playing with action figures and sketching stuff out. And it's, but you have the responsibility of making it come into existence from nothing, but it's also fun.
Would you say that's like probably the best part about working in animation?
So far, yeah. I mean, I haven't had a better experience in animation than that.
Right.
Even seeing it finalized wasn't as much fun. No offense to the animators, but seeing it finalized was like, oh yeah, that's pretty cool. But bringing it to life with actors and just that was just out of nothing.
So later you ventured into the documentary space with Happy Jail. How was that different compared to some of your previous projects?
That was the first big project that was documentary and for Netflix. I'd done a couple other docs before, but we were editing it in partnership in a way. Like they did not take us on after distribution. So we were still making the show and telling a story and collaboratively exploring where it went. But in a documentary, the lifting required to pivot with the story is just tremendous. And it's a real trust the process kind of thing. You don't always know if you have the footage to make this dramatic point, but you kind of remember that it actually happened and find it, figure out, with these pieces. It's like that scene in Apollo 13 where Ed Harris, I think, dumps all that stuff out on the table and says, okay, you need to make this fit into that with only what you have here.
Yeah.
And it was like that. It's a high wire act, I guess.
So would you say you have more of the creative control then? Because like, is there a shot list order that you have to follow? Because I know on narrative stories, you probably have more of a shot list that you have to follow. But with documentaries, is it just kind of like, here you go, try and end with this and start with this, and then kind of?
It all depends, but it felt a lot like that with Happy Jail. We knew the story and we got really lucky in that Michelle Josue, our director, went to the Philippines to shoot in this jail. For those of you who haven't seen it, it's the CPDRC in the Philippines. They went viral about 2007 with this performance that they had the inmates dancing to Michael Jackson's Thriller. And they went back 10 years later and saw what, with Rodrigo Duterte and all the new changes in government there, like what is that place like now? And it's of course a very mixed bag, but it's a prison story, and it's harrowing. But my director got very lucky in that she went down there and, not for too many spoilers, but got a ton of actual content and story points happening on camera while she was there. So we kind of knew where it went, what we wanted to say, but there's just so much material.
Could you also tell us a little bit about Fugitive Dreams, directed by Jason Newlander?
Jason is kind of a local, I don't want to say hero, but celebrity. And if he hears this, he'll love that I'm saying that. But he does a lot of theater here in Austin, and he wanted to make a piece that felt very much like it could have been on a theater, with a playwright writing the script, and it was something that actually performed on stage. So this is a film that is about two drifters who come together and build a bond, and it is shot in black and white, 4:3 aspect ratio, and it's gorgeous. Pete Simonite did the photography. The performances are great, and it's very trippy. It's kind of lynchy. I don't know how else to describe it, but it's a free-flowing narrative, and I hope everyone gets to see it soon. Black and white, 4:3.
So can you tell us a little bit about what's next for you and anything we can be looking out for?
Yeah, right now I am, can't say too much, but I'm working in-house at a medical device company here in town, but we're also doing some mini docs, and I'd love to get some Vice News style pieces out there. So I think mini docs and documentaries for the near future, to be continued. And of course, ads pay the bills. But
Right.
just kind of winging it. After 2020, it was all just short. I don't know about other people, but there was this focus on what's right in front of you and get that done and keep working one step in front of the other, because all our big picture plans kind of had to get put on hold a bit.
Well, lastly, we always like to end our show with some advice from you. Can you share some advice with some of our ACC creatives just on like how to get started in the business as an editor?
I mean, I've been doing this a long time, and there's not a day that goes by that I don't show up and learn something. And almost always it's, part technical, but mostly it's creative, and just finding a new path. You're gonna have to learn how to pivot. You're gonna have to learn to be flexible, and you're going to have to learn to let go of perfectionism or fixating on details that may or may not read to other people. That's kind of where what I had to get over. I guess it's the Stanley Kubrick influence that I'm like, okay, everything's going to be dialed in and
Right.
perfect like this. But in the real world, you just have to keep your eye on what's important. What's important is the emotion. What's important is what's happening and the connection between the audience and the film. And a lot of that is editing. A lot of that is editorial. And that's really the prize. Keep your eye on that. Anyone can cut, but to get that flow and that storytelling going where people are emotionally invested that's the real skill. That's the real measure. And focus on that. Marshall Lucas saved Star Wars. And a lot of that is just, you can Google it and look it up, but a lot of that is stuff that nobody outside the editing room really thinks about when they think of editing. They think of cutting.
Well, that does it. Thank you for joining us on CinemaWorks Late Night. You can follow Mike on these social channels to watch more of his work on Netflix, Hulu, and YouTube. Be sure to subscribe to our ACCTV YouTube channel to watch more episodes of CinemaWorks Late Night or many more ACCTV original shows. We'll see you next time.